failure feels personal. That is why it controls people. Not because it is fatal. Because it feels like a verdict. One mistake starts sounding like an identity. One setback starts looking like a future. You stop trying before life can reject you. You call it caution, but it is fear wearing a smart outfit. And it steals more dreams than failure ever could. Here's the truth. Failure is not the enemy you think it is. Most people do not fear losing money, status, or time as much as they fear what loss says about them. They fear the private sentence after the setback, the one that whispers maybe you were never enough. That whisper hurts more than the event, because events end, but identity stories try to live forever. So if you want to stop fearing failure, stop treating every outcome like a character reference. A failed attempt is an event, not a biography, not a prophecy, and never the final word on you. The first shift is simple, but it changes everything. Separate performance from worth. You can perform badly and still be valuable, respected, intelligent, and fully capable of winning later. You can lose publicly and still be strong, because one bad day never measures an entire person. Most people never learn this, because childhood trained them to merge effort, praise, and identity together. A good grade meant you were smart, and a bad result meant you disappointed someone important. So now your nervous system still treats mistakes like emergencies, even when the stakes are not life and death. That is why sending the application, posting the video, or starting the business can feel weirdly dangerous. The action is not deadly, but your ego thinks exposure means humiliation, and humiliation feels unforgettable. But here's what winners do differently. They change the question before they change the result. They stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "What will this teach me fast?" That question pulls you out of drama and puts you back into power. Fear grows when outcomes feel mysterious, final, and personal, but it shrinks when outcomes become useful and measurable. Think about learning to fight, speak, sell, lead, or create at a serious level. The first attempts usually look rough, not because you are doomed, but because beginning is supposed to look honest. Mastery never starts polished. It starts exposed, clumsy, and willing to be seen unfinished. The fastest learners are rarely the most gifted people in the room. They are the least addicted to looking impressive. That is a powerful rule for life. If you worship appearing capable, you avoid becoming capable. You protect your image for a season, while your potential quietly starves in the background. So here's the shift. Stop trying to look fearless and start trying to become anti-fragile. Fearless people are rare, but anti-fragile people are built through repeated contact with difficulty and honest correction. They do not need every move to work. They need every move to teach and sharpen them. They do not collapse when life says no. They collect information, adjust their angle, and move again. That is how fear loses its grip. You stop demanding certainty before action and trust your response after impact. This matters because confidence is not the belief that nothing will go wrong. Confidence is remembering you can handle it. The strongest people you know are not people with perfect records. They are people with recovery stories. They lost, returned smarter, and built again without begging anyone for permission to continue. That is real power, and you build it one proof point at a time. So the next step is practical. Shrink failure down to a size your nervous system can survive repeatedly. Most people try to defeat fear with giant, dramatic action, and that usually backfires faster than they expect. They make one huge leap, overload themselves emotionally, then treat the crash like a prophecy about their limits. A better method is smaller reps with faster recovery, especially when fear has been running your patterns for years. If you fear speaking, do not begin with the biggest stage you can find. Begin with one clear opinion in one small room, delivered with your full attention and steady voice. If you fear rejection, do not start with the person whose answer feels like life or death. Start with 10 low-stakes requests this week and let your nervous system learn survivability through repetition. If you fear launching, stop waiting for the masterpiece that protects your pride from criticism. Ship the useful version, learn from real response, and improve where reality gives you information. Courage grows to repetition, not ceremony, and you are not trying to feel ready forever. You are trying to become familiar with discomfort until it stops feeling like a threat. What feels unbearable today often becomes normal after enough honest exposure and thoughtful recovery. That is how the brain changes, not through slogans but through evidence gathered from repeated survival. You discover that the moment you feared did not destroy your future, and your body starts believing you. There is another truth most people avoid because it sounds less noble than the speeches. What you call fear of failure is often fear of judgment. You are not only worried about the result, you are worried about who might witness the result. You imagine faces, opinions, comparisons, and silent conversations that might happen after you miss. But most of that audience exists only in your head. Real life is less dramatic than insecure people imagine, because most people are busy managing themselves. Even when someone does judge you, that judgment has no authority unless you adopt it. You do not need universal approval to make meaningful progress. You need a mission strong enough to outvote embarrassment. That is why purpose matters so much when fear starts talking, because weak reasons make fear sound much louder. When the reason is strong, fear becomes background noise. You can still move through with intention. A parent starts the business because the family needs more options than comfort can provide. An artist posts the work because the message matters more than looking polished on the first attempt. A man gets back in shape because he is tired of negotiating with his own excuses. A woman leaves the safe lane because hiding has become more painful than risking visibility. Purpose does not erase fear. It simply gives fear real competition, and sometimes that changes an entire life. Now let me give you a mindset that changes the whole game before the next big attempt. Before any meaningful move, decide what failure will mean in advance. Do not let disappointment define the meaning later, when emotion is loud and perspective is weak. Define it while you are calm, grounded, and still capable of telling yourself the truth. Tell yourself this clearly: if this does not work, I need better timing, stronger skill, clearer messaging, or more reps. It does not mean I am finished, exposed forever, or sentenced to a smaller future. Pre-deciding the meaning protects you from emotional exaggeration when results finally arrive and adrenaline starts writing stories. Because in the heat of disappointment, the mind becomes a terrible narrator and tries to turn moments into destinies. You must interrupt that pattern deliberately if you want lasting freedom from fear. Winners do not just manage action, they manage interpretation, and they protect meaning with discipline. They refuse to let one bad chapter become the title of the whole book. Here is another practice that matters more than people realize. Review failure with structure, not shame. After a setback, ask only 3 questions: what worked, what did not, and what changes next time. That rhythm keeps you moving without spiraling into emotional theater disguised as self-awareness. This is how mature confidence is built, not by avoiding pain, but by processing pain without self-destruction. And yes, some failures will hit hard, and some losses will embarrass you deeply. Some plans will collapse, and some people will doubt you more after they watch you struggle. That is part of the price, but do not confuse pain with danger. Pain is often the tuition, and quitting is usually the more expensive bill. Too many people obsess over the temporary sting of trying and ignore the lifelong ache of self-betrayal. They protect themselves from a public setback, then quietly live with a private regret that keeps returning. Regret is heavier because it follows you into quiet rooms and stays longer than failure ever does. Failure usually teaches and leaves, but regret sits down, gets comfortable, and starts decorating a place. So if you want freedom, stop worshiping comfort as if it were safety. Comfort is useful for recovery, but terrible as a permanent strategy for a meaningful life. A comfortable life becomes a trapped life when every decision is designed to avoid exposure. Growth asks more from you than comfort ever will. It asks for experiments, humility, and the willingness to be seen learning in real time. Yes, that can feel brutal for the ego, but it is beautiful for the future. Every survived risk makes your world larger, your options wider, and your courage more available. That last part matters deeply, because self-respect is not built by talking about potential. Self-respect is built by keeping promises under pressure and showing yourself what you do when fear appears. When you act despite fear, you send yourself a powerful message. I can trust myself in hard moments. That trust changes everything because it makes discipline easier, decisions cleaner, and rejection less personal. Your identity is no longer based on being untouched by failure. It is based on returning wiser after failure. That is the identity you want, not the flawless one, but the resilient, adaptive, steady one. The kind of person who keeps moving with wisdom instead of panic becomes very hard to stop. So the next time fear shows up, do not ask how to eliminate it instantly. Ask a better question. What action would a stronger version of me take while still feeling this? Then do that action, maybe small, maybe imperfect, maybe unglamorous, but undeniably real. Because action is the only language fear truly respects, and thinking alone never changes your wiring. Thinking about courage does not build courage, and waiting for certainty does not build courage. Repeated action does, especially honest action taken after disappointment, doubt, or visible mistakes. That is how you stop fearing failure forever, not by becoming impossible to hurt, but impossible to control through hurt. You realize a failed attempt cannot destroy you unless you abandon yourself afterward. Once that lesson becomes real, fear starts losing territory, and you start moving through life differently. You decide faster, recover cleaner, and stop treating every risk like a referendum on your worth. You stop asking life for guarantees that never promised anyone serious about growth. And in that moment, something powerful happens inside you. The timid version of you starts losing influence. The version that hid, hesitated, and called fear maturity begins fading under stronger evidence. Because now you know something better than comfort ever taught you. You know failure is survivable, correction is available, and skill can always be built. You know embarrassment expires, rejection redirects, and one bad moment cannot define a committed person. Most importantly, you know your life expands the moment fear stops making your decisions for you. So step forward, not because success is guaranteed, but because staying small has a guaranteed cost. Take the shot, make the call, post the work, and start the plan that fear keeps delaying. Learn the lesson, then come back stronger, clearer, and less impressed by the voice that once ruled you. That is how winners think. That is how freedom starts, and that is how fear finally stops owning your future.